Well, if you are new to Timberlake Church, that is how they welcome and introduce me every single week. So I always appreciate it. Well, once again, happy Father's Day. A few weeks ago, we kicked off a teaching series called Summer Playlist, and it's an eclectic type of playlist that really is a compilation of different themes and topics. And so today, I want you to know I am talking about men, and I am talking to men. Now, I'm aware that at least half of the people who make up and engage with us here at Timberlake Church are women. And so I just want to be clear that we love women, we honor women, we affirm women, and we celebrate women at Timberlake Church. Quite honestly, you look better and you smell better than men, and so we need women in every aspect of our church, including all aspects of leadership. At the same time, we need men. And so today is Father's Day, and over the years, I've come to realize that men listen better and engage more when I'm talking specifically to them, and we live at a time period in history where it's important to be direct with men. And I don't have any disclaimers other than to say a lot of what I'm gonna talk about today could apply easily to women, but since I'm talking to men, that's who I'm gonna focus on. And I'm doing this because it's become increasingly popular in our culture to downplay the value of men. Right? You turn on a movie and the dad is the dumbest person in the storyline. You turn on a sitcom and the fool is always the husband or the father or the male boss. All right, let's just look at some of these individuals, right? You got Homer Simpson, who for 35 years defined manhood, right? Bumbling idiot, clueless father. Michael Scott, one of the greatest shows of all time, The Office, lacks social awareness and his behavior is always bordering on inappropriate. Eddie Walker in Barbershop, just an idiot. Old guy, strong opinions, no customers. Right, often wrong, never in doubt. You got Phil Dunphy from Modern Family. Oblivious to everything, and he's always trying way too hard to be cool and to fit in. And I'm not naive to the fact these guys are actors, right? These are animations. But they really do represent how men are often portrayed in movies and in sitcoms and in other forms of media. We don't really see a balance of men being portrayed as responsible and mature adults. And so in our culture, men are regularly mocked or devalued. In many cases, they're depicted as toxic. And so what I want to do today is I just want to rip up the picture of men that's been painted for us, and I want to highlight the fact that every man is unique. Just like every woman is unique, every man is unique. And it's super important for us to understand this because our culture has created large stereotypes. Right back in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, right here in America, John Wayne set the standard for what a real man is. He was tough, he was stoic, emotionally resilient, had a very clear sense of values, what's right, what's wrong, and often he was the lone hero. So he solidified a certain image in our mind, and around the same time, the Marlboro Man became one of the most effective marketing campaigns in history. At the time, women were the only ones really smoking filtered cigarettes, and so they create this image of a macho man, and it becomes, Marlboro does, the #1 best-selling cigarette brand in the world. So this stereotype of manhood was cemented into our culture, and it continues to grow and evolve in different ways. Now, some of you are from countries, you're from cultures that have a very different idea, different picture of what a man is. But in America, when we hear the word man's man, we still get this picture in our mind of a tough guy that drives big trucks and plays sports and watches MMA fighting. Now, I'm from Wisconsin, so I kind of like the stereotype, right? If you want to know what manhood is, you're looking at Exhibit A, ladies and gentlemen. Right? My favorite color is camo. I love to hunt. I like cold beer. I enjoy a good cigar. I love to eat hamburgers and steaks. But none of that makes me a man. It makes me awesome, but it does not make me a man. And some would argue, Dave, you don't even fit the stereotype, right? Because I don't play sports and I don't drive a big pickup truck. I actually drive an electric car, so right? But when it comes to being a man, we have to be careful to not ignore the unique personalities and temperaments that all of us have. I come from a fairly large family. I have 5 brothers and 1 sister. One of my brothers is an engineer. I have another brother who owns a construction company. I have a brother who leads a mission organization. I have another brother who manages restaurants. So we're all dudes from the same family, yet we have different personalities and temperaments and interests and passions and giftings. is like Esau and Jacob, the grandsons of Abraham. Here's what we read about them. As the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter. He was an outdoorsman. But Jacob had a quiet temperament, preferring to stay at home. Both of them were men. One loved the outdoors, the other liked to be indoors. Walked around wearing a kiss the cook apron, and he was fine with that, right? Every man is unique. But our uniqueness does not erase the fact that God has wired men in a certain way and to do certain things. And when those of us who are men act in ways outside of our wiring, what happens is we become very unhealthy. And this is where we get the term toxic masculinity from. Right? What happens when we're unhealthy is we suppress our emotions. We become manipulative. We allow anger to go uncontrolled. We become violent. We become sexually aggressive. We try to dominate and control other people. We become self-reliant. We shut other people out. And those are definitely toxic traits. But they are the result of us choosing to be someone we were never intended to be and acting in ways we were never intended to act. So I want to be very clear about 3 things that men are not, just so we're all on the same page. Number 1, a man is not a boy. A boy is a child. A boy is someone who expects other people to meet their needs and demands. And if little boys don't get what they want, what do? They whine, they complain, they throw temper tantrums. So a boy is immature and dependent on other people. If you've ever watched any movie that Will Ferrell's in, he is the epitome of a man acting like a boy. And some people think it's hilarious when it's in a movie, which it can be depending on your sense of humor, but it is devastating when a husband or father acts like a boy. When a child acts like a boy, we expect it. When a man acts like a boy, it's scary and toxic. The Apostle Paul, he writes about spiritual maturity, but he does it in the context of physical maturity. And here's what he writes. He says, when I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child, but when I grew up, I put away childish things. When men act like a child, they are short-tempered, they're greedy, they're aggressive, they're jealous, they're suspicious. A man is not a boy. Men are not supposed to go through life being takers and consumers all the time. And this is a very complicated topic because there is confusion in our culture of when a boy actually becomes a man. Some cultures have a very clear process or a very defined moment when you are no longer a boy, you are now expected to act like a man. But in America, it's kind of all over the map. Right? According to Disney, at 10 years old, you should be considered an adult because that's when you pay an adult fare. According to Bayer Aspirin, you can take an adult dosage at 12 years old. According to the DMV, you're responsible enough to drive a car at 16. According to video game manufacturers, you're pretty much an adult and mature enough at 17 years old to play violent games. The government determines you're an adult at 18. That's when you can vote and serve in the military. If you want to buy alcohol, you got to be 21. If you want to rent a car without a surcharge, in most cases, you have to be 25. And then to confuse all of us, if you want to buy a seat on Alaska Airlines, you're considered an adult at 2 years old. So somewhere between 2 years and 25, you're an adult. Crazy confusing. A man is not a boy, but this transition from boyhood to manhood does happen, and it happens as a boy takes on more and more responsibility. A man will apologize. A boy will make excuses. A man will think about the implications of their decision before they do something. A boy will act impulsively and get caught up in the moment. A man will look for ways to help others. A boy will look for others to help him. And when a child acts in childish ways, nobody's surprised. When an adult male acts in childish ways, it's hurtful to everyone around them. So a man is not a boy. Something else a man is not is a man is not an animal. Animals do whatever comes natural to them, right? They're driven by biological urges such as hunger or sexual desire or shelter. And so they act on impulse. If they feel threatened, they become aggressive and violent. They don't have great reasoning, they just are instinctive. Those of you ladies who are single, if you are dating a guy who is always impulsive and cannot delay gratification in any area of his life, run. You don't need an animal in your life. Men are not supposed to act like animals. We are human beings. And here's what we read in the very first book of the Bible about human beings. God created human beings, and he did it in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So I reiterate this a few times a year, but as followers of Jesus, we do believe that human beings were made in the image of God. We are not insects, we are not animals, we are not machines. We were made in God's image. Now, to be clear, that does not mean we are God. It just means that we have the ability to reflect God in many ways. Like God, we are intellectual. We can think and reason and solve problems. We're relational. We can give and receive real love. We have a moral consciousness. We can discern right from wrong. So even though we're humans, because we were made in God's image, we have the ability to reflect God in ways that other parts of creation cannot. So men, we are not boys, we are not animals, and I will add this, we are not superheroes. Superheroes are indestructible, right? They fix everyone's problems. Superheroes don't cry, they're not emotional, they're not vulnerable, and they're really not dependent on other people. The closest person that I'm aware of, the closest human that I'm aware of, who is a real life superhero would be Theodore Roosevelt. I just want to walk through some of his resume. This guy was amazing. Roosevelt somehow overcame severe childhood asthma to become an avid outdoorsman. So he was known, physical fitness, he was known for boxing and hunting and hiking. He scaled the Matterhorn in the Swiss Alps. He navigated some of the uncharted parts of the Amazon River. He went on month-long safaris. He spent time as a rancher in the Badlands of North Dakota. He created a volunteer cavalry group known as the Rough Riders, and with only a month of training under their belt, they defeated the Spaniards in 2 major battles of the Spanish-American War. So as close to a superhero as probably any human is gonna get. He was a beast. He graduated from Harvard. He wrote more than 35 books. He was the youngest person to ever be elected president. To be president. He was the first American to win a Nobel Peace Prize. He was the only president to receive the Medal of Honor. One of my favorite stories about him took place in October of 1912. He was campaigning for the White House, and he was shot point blank with a .32 caliber pistol. The bullet lodged 2 inches deep into his chest. So he took the stage, and he motioned and asked everybody to quiet down, and then he informed them that he had just been shot and the bullet was still in him. Well, the audience is horrified. And then Roosevelt unbuttons his vest and reveals a blood-stained shirt. And he says, it's gonna take more than that to kill a bull moose, referring to himself. And then he tells the audience, he says, I give you my word, I do not care one rap about being shot, not a rap. And his aides are wanting him to go to the hospital, but he reaches into his coat pocket and he pulls out a 50-page speech with 2 bullet holes in it. And he apologizes to the audience that he needs to get to the hospital so he can't speak long, and then he proceeds to talk for almost 90 minutes. Then he goes to the hospital and he does all right. He lives for another 7 years. And I share all of that with you because if there was ever a person who seemed indestructible, it would be Teddy Roosevelt. But he wasn't. He actually lost the election. And even though he lived a very full and adventurous life, he died at just 60 years old. He was not a superhero. King David of Israel, he had a reputation for being a warrior, but he regularly wrote songs and psalms like this. Have mercy on me, Lord, for I am in distress. Tears blur my eyes. My body and soul are withering away. I'm dying from grief. My years are shortened by sadness. Sin has drained my strength. I am wasting away from within. Superheroes don't talk like that. And so I'm just saying it's important that we embrace our limitations and our weaknesses, because when we begin to feel this pressure to be a superhero all the time and to take on more and more stress and more responsibility, inevitably what's gonna happen is it will catch up and we will start to break apart. We see this all the time. Some of the strongest men in our world, some of the heroes that we would say they are amazing, they start to break apart, and then what happens is they get caught up in the trappings of monies and honeys, right? All the time. Humans are complex. We have all sorts of limitations and a wide range of emotions. And this idea of men being destructible, it was fueled in the early to mid 1900s when guys were going off to war. Because what would happen is Americans, men would get close to the enemy lines, they'd be in foxholes, and in order to not go crazy, they had to learn how to switch off part of their emotions, a big part of them. And then they came back to the States and were expected to just flip the switch and turn it back on and all of a sudden feel things again. And it was very difficult and almost impossible for some guys to do that, which is why a lot of our parents and certainly many of our grandparents grew up in homes that expressed very little emotion. When men act like boys or animals or superheroes, inevitably it will result in some form of toxic masculinity. And there's nothing more dangerous in the world than a man who's insecure and arrogant and ungrounded. And that is the reason that although there are a lot of males in our world, not all of them are men. Some are boys or animals or guys trying to be superheroes. And I just want you to think about the implications of this. There's an endless list of nonprofits, men, that quite honestly, if we came together and we started behaving and living in a way that God had designed us to, we could actually eliminate. And I think of all the nonprofits that exist for women and children trying to figure out how to pick up the broken pieces of their life because of how they were treated by a husband or a father or some male figure in their life. God created us for something bigger. And I'm not here to bash you, right? I know we just spent some time talking about the things we are not. We get this all the time. I just wanted to be clear about that. But what I really want to do is spend our time focusing on what God did design us for and what God did create us for. Because this is where we become strengthened. And forgive me if I spit. It just is what it is, right? So God designed men. Here we go. Number one, to build. God designed us to build. He designed men to create and cultivate and make progress. That's how we're wired. As a matter of fact, after God created the first man, what does he do? He gives him a job. God decides, I want man to partner with me in taking care of this planet. Here's what we read. The Lord God placed the man in the Garden of Eden to tend and watch over it. Before there's any evil, before there's any brokenness in our world, man's given the responsibility to grow and cultivate something. And it's important to understand this because sometimes we're like, well, we have to work and we have a job because this world is broken. No. God gave that stuff before the world was broken. This is just part of the way he designed us, right? He designed us to build, he designed us for progress. This is why you have guys very early on, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, they're just tinkering around with computers. They're trying to figure out how to program way back in high school. It's just wired in them. A couple years after graduation, start Microsoft, right? It's why 30 years ago, Jeff Bezos is setting up a desk inside a garage in Bellevue, and he's working on software for an online bookstore that becomes Amazon. And whether it's Amazon or Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or Larry Page or Sergey or Brin or a host of names that you may or may not have ever heard of, men love to tinker. They love to start things and build things and cultivate things. And once something's created, what do men love to do? They love to improve on it. This is why the favorite word for every guy is upgrade. Bigger TV, bigger speakers, newer car, faster boat, larger house. Guys, you are designed to create and build. But it's important to understand this. It's not just businesses. It's not just products. It's not just software that you were created to design and build. God created you for something more. So I want you to consider this question. What am I building that really matters? Are you building character? Are you building a loving marriage? Are you building secure kids? Are you building a legacy that you can hand down? It is important to build something significant. God created us to build, but even Jesus asked his disciples a very straightforward question, and here's what he asked. He said, and what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? So what does it matter if you just build and gain and keep moving forward? Yes, I've created you that way, but in the process, you lose your soul. Now, most of us are good at creating and cultivating in our careers, but we have to be careful that we are also doing that in the areas of life that have significant value, like our families and our marriage and our foundation, our spiritual foundation that's in our life. Something else that God created men for and designed us to do is to teach. Men are wired to accumulate knowledge and to pass it on. Now, women also have this great gift of teaching, but it's amazing how many men just kind of reject it. Even today, on my way out the house, my wife looked at me and said, are you seriously wearing that? Like, you look very relaxed for Father's Day. I said, you know it. Right? Men love to teach. And then we love to pass our knowledge and insights on so much that we give it even when we're not asked for it, which is why there's this term mansplaining. And I kid you not, I'm putting together this message and I figured there's gonna be some people who never heard the term mansplain, so I start to literally write out what mansplaining is. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna look like an idiot. I'm gonna look like an idiot if I try to explain it, right? We have this young lady who lives with our family, a friend of my daughter, Alyssa. Her name is Grace, but anytime that I try to mansplain in my house, or anytime I try to get involved and act like, just without even thinking, nobody else in the house could probably do this, she always is so sarcastic with me. She says, thank you. What would we ever do without a man in the house? Oh my gosh, I'm so blessed. And I'm just like, just remember I can kick you out at any time, right? Men are wired to teach. And there's this natural hierarchy with guys. 8-year-old kids, what do? They look up to 12 and 13-year-old kids. 18, 19-year-old young men, they look up to young men in their 20s or 30s. If you're a man, I want you to hear this. You don't have to wonder if you're teaching. You are always teaching. But the question you need to stop and consider is this: what am I teaching that really matters? Are you just passing down curse words and coarse jokes and bad habits and chauvinistic ways of treating women, or are you teaching something significant? Early on in Israel's history, Moses gathered together the people of Israel, and he says, God's given us some laws and commands that we need to operate by in order to develop as a society. And he starts to articulate what those laws are, but then he speaks specifically to the parents, and here's what he says. He says, and you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today. He says, repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're on the road, when you are going to bed and when you are getting up. Men, it is your responsibility to teach your kids about Jesus and shows them what it looks like to follow him. Now, women, it's also your responsibility, but I let you know, I'm talking directly to men today. As a church, we have a responsibility to supplement what you're teaching your kids, and we do our best to try to echo the ways you are living out your faith in front of them. And I know, especially if you're new to faith, this can feel very intimidating, very overwhelming, but I'm not asking you to gather everyone together every day and let's have a Bible study and let's have a prayer meeting as a family. If you do that, that's great, but I know that can feel overwhelming and kids can be squirrely and all that stuff. But here's what I'm asking you to do. As a parent, you need to be having regular conversation with your kids that steer them and point them in the direction of Jesus. And that's not gonna happen through a one-time event. It's gonna happen through a regular rhythm of doing things and having conversations with them naturally, again, that points them to Jesus. And if you have young kids, I'm asking you to take it from someone who's got older kids. If you have young kids, take advantage of this. Because you tell your 7-year-old, hey, we're going out for breakfast. And in your mind, you're like, hey, I'm gonna have at least a couple different moments where I try to point the conversation to Jesus. You tell your 7-year-old, we're going to breakfast, it's an adventure. You tell your 17-year-old you wanna go out to breakfast, 2 big hurdles in front of you. Number 1, they don't wanna get up. Number 2, they don't wanna be seen with you in public. So take advantage when they're young. Something else God created men for, designed us to do, number 3, bless. Every one of us is gonna leave a legacy of some kind. God's intention for you, God's intention for me is to leave a legacy, a blessing. And to bless someone is to want the best for them. It's to say, I'm gonna add to other people's life rather than take away from it. 3,000 years ago, King David of Israel writes a song of blessing that includes these words. May he grant your heart's desires and make all your plans succeed. May the Lord answer all your prayers. That's the attitude if someone wants to bless others. It's very different from this attitude we often see with men, right? I'm gonna crush you, I'm gonna destroy you. I'm gonna prove why I'm the best. One of the most famous blessings in Jewish tradition is a blessing that priests would pray over people that goes like this. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace. Men were created by God to bless others. Now think about this in the context of women and children. Instead of being a burden to women and children, we have a responsibility to bless them by praying over them and encouraging them and loving them and protecting them and doing our best to hand down a godly legacy. And I don't know of a single woman on this planet who doesn't want guys in their life doing those kind of things. And the question I want you to consider is this: how am I blessing others in a way that really matters? Well, I'm blessing them financially. I'm blessing them, I buy them gifts. Every so often I'll throw a surprise. Those are great, but are you blessing those around you in a way that really matters long term? Are you blessing with your time? Are you blessing with life-giving words? Right, my parents handed down a spiritual legacy to me and my siblings. And I realize that for many of you, that is not your story. You're a first-generation follower of Jesus, and I want you to hear, you are changing the course of your family tree. right? Because when you follow Jesus, it should impact every area of your life. And so for those of you who are first generation, I want you to hear, you have the opportunity to hand down to your kids something that was not handed down to you. One more thing that God designed men to do is to fight. God has given men the heart of a warrior. And obviously, I'm not talking about toxic masculinity. I'm not talking about taking advantage of women, abusing people, chauvinistic behavior. I just want you to hear, men are built for battle. This is why boys love playing video games that involve violence. It's why boys love competition in sports. It's why so many young men sign up for the military. And I know this is a generalization, right? I realize this, but when my girls were young, they just wanted to play house and do makeup. So that's what I would do with them. I would sit there and let them put makeup on me, and I would do all that kind of stuff, right? I just would. All right, let's take it down. So my son Jaden, very different. My son Jaden, what do you want to do? He wanted to go hunting. He loves working out. Why? Because he wants to send me pictures of him flexing. He does this all the time. He just sends me these pictures and him flexing. And I kid you not, do not worry about, are you embarrassing your son? No, I not only asked permission for this, he sent me this. It says, show this to the church. He's like, he ain't ashamed. Let them know, right? And here's the deal. I realize every guy's unique. In another life, he might have wanted to learn coding or play volleyball or be an athlete. He's actually going off to college this fall to do videos. But here's the deal. That's just wired in him. He's 18 years old. I go to get in his car this week for something, and there is this squirt gun about this size just sitting there in his driver's door. And I said, dude, what is this here for? And apparently there's something called senior assassin season. I don't fully understand it, but it involves seniors pursuing each other with water guns and Nerf guns. Men are built to fight. God's given us a heart of a warrior. But if you've checked out, if you've kind of like your mind's wandering off, I do not want you to miss what I'm about to say. Here we go. A warrior without a cause to fight for will find the wrong thing to fight against. A warrior without the right cause is going to be destructive. So if you don't have something worthwhile to fight against, what are you gonna do? You're gonna fight your spouse. You're gonna fight your kids. You're gonna fight authority. In many cases, you're gonna fight boredom, which will lead you down a very destructive path. And we see stories like this on the news all the time. Men who become toxic because they chose to fight the wrong things. The Apostle Paul, one of the most influential leaders in the history of the church, before he followed Jesus, he went by the name of Saul. He was a warrior, but he was using his aggression for the wrong things. Here's one of the things we read about Saul. Saul was going everywhere to destroy the church. He went from house to house, dragging out both men and women to throw them into prison. So before he's a follower of Jesus, Saul, who we know as Paul, is fighting the wrong battles. Men, let me ask you another direct question. What are you fighting for that really matters? There's a lot of pressure in our culture for men to just sit back and be passive and not fight anything. That's irresponsible. That's ignoring the wiring we have. In reality, we need men to fight, but we need the right cause to fight for. And the good news is there are a lot of good causes worth fighting for. Your marriage is worth fighting for. Your children are worth fighting for. Your future is worth fighting for. Your character is worth fighting for. Financial freedom is worth fighting for. Breaking some sort of addiction, it's worth fighting for. And what I want to do as we wrap up today is I want to take a moment, and a few moments actually, and watch the story of a guy right here from Timberlake Church who decided to do his best to put God first in his life, even though it wasn't natural for him. He didn't grow up with a deep faith, but he decided to fight for something that would provide a foundation for his life. Check out this story.
And my name is Roland. I've been coming to Timberlake now for just about 2 years. Born and raised in Hawaii on the Big Island. I've always been blessed to have that family environment that always loved me so deeply. My sisters were much older than me, so I was blessed to not just have one parent. I felt like I had three that was always there to take care and care for me. And grandparents took me to church, a Catholic church. I didn't really understand much about religion other than I loved both my grandparents dearly and I wanted to be there with them. Unfortunately, I lost one of my grandparents at a very young age, and I remember seeing my grandma in her casket in church, and that that's still a visual that I see. And I had no want to go into church. How could someone that everyone speaks so highly over would allow this to happen? I kind of resented God. And for about 15 years, I really didn't step foot in the church. When I was 18, flew up to Arizona and started my automotive career going down to UTI, and spent about 2 years there and decided to fly up to Seattle. I met my wife at work about 10 years ago, and we really grew together. We decided that we wanted to start a family, and it was important to us we wanted to find a foundation. Really, I look at the people that follow religion. I like to see how they raise their families, the morals that they grow up in, and that's what I wanted for my family. I got an auntie of ours that she went to church, and she told us the experiences that she was having here at Timberlake. So me and my wife, we decided, that was the sign we were waiting for, and we showed up. The first service that we attended, we sat in the family room because my daughter was extremely young at that time. We sat, we listened, and we laughed, right, making jokes. And me and Karina looked at each other and says, this is actually pretty fun. Maybe we give it another try. So we finally made that decision we wanted to let the Lord into our life. This really changed our lives here, right? And changed our outlook and has made our relationship stronger, between our family and friends, between me personally and the Lord. Fast forward, here's 2 years. And we get up in the morning looking forward to every week coming to church and hearing the message and trying to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that and really put it into my own mix. We now reevaluate what's important to us. And it's important to us that we put the Lord, your God, in the center of us, and we really build our lives around Him. So Karina and I, we got baptized maybe 4 months ago. I was baptized at a young age as a Catholic, and my wife was not. And we decided that this is the step forward that we wanted to do in our family. It was definitely an excitement. Really, it's a fresh start. And that was really what I looked forward to the most, was really a fresh restart on life. I want to be the best father that I can for my daughter, and I want to be the best husband that I can for my wife. If it wasn't for the Lord really touching me and helping me reevaluate what is important and what is not important, I don't think I would be the father I am today without His guidance.
Yeah. I love that he says we reevaluate what's most important to us. That's the statement made by a man, right? Because boys, they just go through life. They don't really think about what's most important. They don't think about the direction they're going. And I'm so proud of Roland. I'm so proud of the people here at Timberlake Church, both men and women, who are fighting against the status quo. You're fighting against self-centeredness. You're building a foundation for your life. And he ends by just saying, hey, I want to be the best husband. I want to be the best father. Like, boys don't talk like that. Boys are like, I want to crush a competition. I want to just go hang out every night with my guy friends, and we're going to have, guys, I love this. And I love how often we see it here at Timberlake Church, because people are regularly fighting for their marriages. People are regularly fighting for their families. The fact that you could be doing anything on Father's Day, right? You could say, hey, this is my day. I'm going to go out and enjoy, but you're here. I'm grateful for the people who've chosen to fight on behalf of others or alongside others who are just too exhausted or unable to fight for themselves. And I'm just gonna be uber practical, right? A few weeks ago, I'm here on a Saturday morning to open and to welcome some guys who gather together, and some women as well, to pack meals for people halfway around the world. And every time we do something like that, we are fighting to ensure those in poverty are being fed. Every time that you give, you're fighting to ensure that the message of God's grace is being communicated in a very clear and articulate way to people on the east side. Right? Vacation Bible School right around the corner. I know people are stepping up. People are saying, hey, I'm gonna take some time off work and volunteer. Or, hey, I've got some margin in my schedule. I'm gonna be a part of this. What are you doing? You are fighting to ensure that children are learning about the love and grace of God at a young age. Our culture constantly encourages men to be takers and consumers and think about themselves. How many women have you been with? How much food can you eat? Right? How many animals have you taken down? The questions are, how many sales have you made? God has called us to something bigger. He has called us to build and to teach and to bless others and fight for something significant. In a Timberlake church, not just on weekends like this, but I want you to know, we don't ever want to bash men or women. On Father's Day, I want you to hear this, men. We have a goal of always wanting to be a church that builds you up and encourages you and is a blessing to you and equips you as you do your best to follow Jesus. But make no mistake about it, we do have an enemy. Satan is always at work trying to use people and events in pretty much every aspect of culture to work against us and discourage us and deflate us and try to defeat us. And so I want to close today with the same words the Apostle Paul challenged his first century readers with. Be on guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be courageous and be strong. Be on guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, and be strong. Let's fight the things that really matter. Go ahead and stand with me, and I'm gonna pray over you. Our Heavenly Father, I thank you for the men and the women of this church. I thank you that you are the God who equips and empowers and strengthens. Heavenly Father, every day, we find ourselves in a battle. There's so much stress, there's so much difficulty, there's so many challenges, there's so many things that are working against us. And so I pray, Heavenly Father, that we would feel encouraged by your Spirit. We would feel empowered by your Spirit, that you would help us to stand strong. You would help us to be courageous in the midst of our fear. Help us to move forward instead of backwards. Help us to move towards you and not away from you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. I love you guys. Have a great week. We'll see you.
Thanks for watching. But before you go, please be sure to bookmark this page so that you can find us again next week. And are you looking for a way to get engaged and join a team? The online chat engagement team is a role that anyone and everyone can do, and it's simple. Engage with people. Create an environment where people are free to be themselves and, more importantly, open to receive the truth of Jesus. And if you're interested in joining this team and becoming part of what God is doing through Timberlake Online, please let me know on your connection card. Links can be found in chat, and I'll see you here next week at online.timberlakechurch.com.